Hi folks, let's try to do Leetcode 557, reverse words in a string. Given a string, you need to reverse the order of characters in each word within a sentence while still preserving white space and initial word order. Example 1 is, let's take Leetcode contest, and you see that every word in the sentence has been reversed. That's all he wants actually. That's not a very hard problem because sometimes they ask you to reverse the whole string. So it's just if you know how to reverse a word, you should be able to reverse the whole string. And he's saying in the string each word is separated by single space and there will not be any extra space in the string, which is cool because I guess if you had things like, imagine you had some extra space in the very beginning, or there might be more than one single space. Instead of single space, there might be maybe many spaces between two words. So we do not even have to take care of that, but we can make it more general than what the problem is asking. So let's try to give it a try. So let's see. What we are going to do is we would have to basically walk the entire string. So let's use a length variable. Well, let's do it in Python too, by the way, I forgot to mention that. So length equal to the len s. So that's the length of the string. Now one thing we should do is we should make sure that because when you swap the characters in the string, you would see that Python will complain about that, and it would say that strings are immutable. So maybe we should work on a list. So how do we make a list? We say as list equal to list as, and so that's good. We will be working on the list of characters including the spaces and everything, and then we can basically put them all together. So uh, how do we now go about it? We would say that while, so let's have a variable I equal to 0, and then while I less than length, in Python they usually do not put these kind of brackets, but I guess no, that doesn't hurt. While I less than length, we would just go ahead and we would start walking this array of characters, and we say if. So now this is interesting. If is space is one of the well-known methods on a character or a string, where if s list I dot is space, then we can just say continue. Now I think if we just continue, we would go into infinite loop because I is not changing, and then we can say continue. How is that? So we have skipped, we always skip the all the spaces, and when we hit a non-space or alpha num as they say, we start, our algorithm gets to work, which is we say j equal to I. We use another index j, we say j equal to I, and then we say while, now again we would say while s list j, while not actually this, right, because this is, now we are actually going for the actual characters, not the spaces, alphanumeric. So while not s list j dot is space, we will say j plus equal to 1. So we just go over all the non-space characters. Basically this is going over the word. And at that point, all we can do is imagine if we had another helper method where we can say self.reverse s list, and then we can give the two indices I and j minus 1. Now you might ask me, why am I giving j minus 1? Because you see, in the last character of the word, j would actually be incrementing beyond the word, the next character beyond the whole word. So that is why we have to pass here j minus 1. And once you are done with this whole thing, our string should be reversed. So, and how do we then return the final output? We just say while self dot um, we just say return. Oh, now you know how to put the an array of characters, you want to put them back as words. So we use join method, and we say we pass the as list, and that's it. We are basically done. Now let's see if we made any logical mistakes in this. So while I less than length, okay. So now here you see what happens after we have done the reverse, and before we go to the next word, we have to reset I to point to j. How is that looking? Because you see the I here would be pointing, for example, just take here. Now imagine I is pointing here and j is pointing here after. And when we are done with reversing the word, like here take, I needs to now move to the value where j was, and that's the first. Basically, I would point to the first space character after the end of the word. And then if we have more space characters, we would be skipping them in this place over here. And so this is how most of these problems of reversing a string basically. When you are reversing, then you're just moving along. You're just skipping the space characters. You're keeping another counter to keep track where the word or the alphanumeric characters begin and end, and then you basically call your helper method another to reverse between these two indices I and j minus 1, and then you reset I to j, and then basically the whole thing repeats as long as I is less than length. Now let's implement a reverse method. So we say, and then we can say here I and j. And how do we reverse it? Now when you reverse a string, or in this case a array of characters or whatever, it's the same thing. Only reason why we are having this as list instead of the string itself is because when you try to actually modify anything in the string, Python would complain saying its strings are immutable. So let us now do this here. So when we say that while I less than j, so we would basically, these two indices I and j are pointing at the ends of the string, beginning and the end. And while I less than j, all we need to do is basically swap the characters. So temp equal to si, and si equal to sj, and sj equal to temp. And before we have to also keep moving I, and we have to keep decrementing j, so that we can get out of this while loop. See, you see, always, just as in life, whenever you enter a loop or anything, you should be able to know how to get out. Otherwise, you would be permanently stuck in that. So every time you have a loop, make sure that you know how shall we get out of that loop. This is the fundamental principle of programming, that you should know how to get out of your loops. So here, this is looking good. So let's try to give it a shot and see if it works. He's saying, oh, I see. Name S is not defined. We can fix that one. Okay. We could have called this S. I mean, it doesn't care whether it is. But I'm just, for the sake of the problem, let's just call it. Alright, let's give it a shot now. Time limit exceeded. Why is that the case? Because let's see what we did here. So we were given here while I less than j, temp equal to, this looks good. I think this logic here seems good. What else could it be then? And while not s list j dot is space. So I think this time limit exceeded is coming because we probably have an infinite loop here. So I is j. Okay, I see. You know what is happening here? We are, while I less than length, if s list I dot is space, then we continue. And then we just basically increment I and then we continue. Otherwise, it sounds to be alright. I mean, while not s list j dot is space j equal to j plus 1. That sounds good too. How about return dot join s list? So where do you think we have made a mistake? I would love to hear in your comments, but let's try to see if we have screwed something here. So while I less than j, we are doing here swapping temp equal s list j equal to temp, and I is incrementing, j is incrementing. So that should be all right. Why is the time limit exceeding? Should we try to print if we are getting called here? So see, this is one of the things that you got to know in how to debug programs, because things are not going to work linearly. It never happens in programming. It's always trial and error. So let's try to debug this problem. We say I equal to, and I usually use PDB, this is a Python debugger, but let's just use the print statement, the rudimentary debugging. So, and j equal to this dot format I comma j, and see if we get actually called at all. Okay, so we can see the problem is right here. We see that I is 0 and j is 4, which kind of makes sense. You see 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. But then we are never actually, this indices are never changing. So I guess we have some terrible error in our program. So once that happened, we continue to call on the same I and j. And I'm wondering why I never changed, because if you see here, oh, I equal to j, I did to I, oh, shoot. You see here, you see the error right here. The problem is that I equal to j is actually sitting outside the while, not inside the while. So I think we know what we did wrong. So let's go again. So this time we were doing fine, but then we have a problem here. We are saying list index order range, while not s list I dot is space, line 12. So how can we fix that? And I think that like here why. So okay, you know what, let's just try to make sure that we are not going over the bounds of the length of our input, and that can be fixed by saying while j less than length n. I think that should do the trick. There you go. So we have fixed the problem. We have this test case has passed. It's time to take off the debugging statement. We don't need that anymore. So now let's try to do a submit and see if all the test cases pass. Okay, well, that's a good news for this Monday, the 6th of July. Our coding efforts have succeeded, and we have been victorious in our efforts to exercise our brain cells and making them more active and more conducive to coding activities. So I'm glad that you guys hopefully enjoyed this, and let's take a shot at other Leetcode problems. It's always a very interesting and fun exercise. So with that, I guess before I sign off, I just wanted to throw some little bit more comments on how to take a shot at these kind of problems, which is whenever you have this reverse words in a string kind of problem, always make sure to keep, you probably have to work on this double pointer, or what they call a double indices kind of thing, where I and j, so one index points at the beginning and the other index points at the end, and there you basically at that point you are just moving them and making sure that you're basically swapping. Another, I guess, one of the interesting things that you would encounter in Python or even in C is just to make sure that when you swap these things, the memory is mutable, in the sense that it's not stored. Like for example, in C, if you had just had a string like s equal to double quote something, that's probably stored in a read-only memory, and you want to make sure that either do you do strdup or you have a mutable array, because otherwise it would not let you modify. So that's why we had to do this trick of changing the string to a list and then working on the list, and then forming the string back from the list without modifying the original string. So those tricks, I guess, you have to keep in mind, but otherwise it all looks good. I will see you guys in the next video. Adios.